Know your marine stuff.
IMO has been working to reduce harmful impacts of shipping on the environment since 1960. MARPOL Annex VI to the International Convention for the Prevention of Pollution from Ships was adopted in 1997 to address air pollution from shipping. Annex 6 seeks to control airborne emissions from ships, SOx, sulfur oxide, NOx, nitrogen oxide, ozone depletion substances, ODS, volatile organic compounds, VOC. Latest amendment in Annex 6 of MARPOL related to SOx emission will come into force in 2020. So today we will discuss some of the details related to these amendments.
What is amendment in Annex 6 MARPOL 2020?
For ships operating outside designated emission control areas, IMO has set a limit for sulfur in fuel oil used on board ships of 0.50% m/m, mass by mass, from 1 January 2020.
This will significantly reduce the amount of sulfur oxide emanating from ships and should have major health and environmental benefits for the world, particularly for populations living close to ports and coasts. What are the limits on sulfur in the regulations?
Until 31 December 2019. For ships operating outside emission control areas, the limit for sulfur content of ships' fuel oil is 3.50% m/m, mass by mass. The 0.50% m/m limit will apply on and after 1 January 2020.
What about the sulfur limit in emission control areas, ECAs?
Since 1 January 2015, the sulfur limit for fuel oil used by ships operating in emission control areas, ECAs, designated by IMO for the control of sulfur oxides, SOx, has been 0.10% m/m.
The ECAs established under MARPOL Annex VI for SOx are the Baltic Sea area, the North Sea area, the North American area, covering designated coastal areas off the United States and Canada, and the United States Caribbean Sea area, waters around Puerto Rico and the United States Virgin Islands. Can this date be changed?
The date is set in the MARPOL Treaty, so it can only be changed by an amendment to the MARPOL Annex VI. This would require a proposal for an amendment to be put forward by a member state that is a party to Annex VI. That proposal then circulated and finally adopted by MEPC.
An amendment to MARPOL is required to be circulated for a minimum of 6 months prior to adoption and then can only enter into force a minimum of 16 months after adoption.
Given that parties to MARPOL Annex VI decided in October 2016 to implement the 2020 date, it is not anticipated that such a proposal would be forthcoming.
How can ships meet lower sulfur emission standards?
Ships can meet the requirement by using low sulfur compliant fuel oil.
An increasing number of ships are also using gas as a fuel, as when ignited it leads to negligible sulfur oxide emissions. This has been recognized in the development by IMO of the International Code for Ships Using Gases and Other Low Flashpoint Fuels, the IGF code, which was adopted in 2015.
Another alternative fuel is methanol, which is being used on some short sea services.
Ships may also meet the SOx emission requirements by using approved equivalent methods, such as exhaust gas cleaning systems or scrubbers, which clean the emissions before they are released into the atmosphere. In this case, the equivalent arrangement must be approved by the ship's administration, the flag state.
What controls will there be once the new global cap takes effect?
Ships taking on fuel oil for use on board must obtain a bunker delivery note, which states the sulfur content of the fuel oil supplied. Samples may be taken for verification.
Ships must be issued with an International Air Pollution Prevention (IAP) certificate by their flag state. This certificate includes a section stating that the ship uses fuel oil with a sulfur content that does not exceed the applicable limit value as documented by bunker delivery notes or uses an approved equivalent arrangement.
Port and coastal states can use port state control to verify that the ship is compliant.
They could also use surveillance. For example, air surveillance to assess smoke plumes and other techniques to identify potential violations. What sanctions will there be for not complying?
Sanctions are established by individual parties to MARPOL. As flag and port states, IMO does not set fines of sanctions, it is down to individual state parties.
What is IMO doing to ensure fuel oil availability?
Implementation is the responsibility of the member states who are contracting parties to MARPOL Annex VI. The decision by MEPC in October 2016 to affirm the effective date of 1 January 2020. More than 3 years before entry into effect of the 0.50% limit is intended, in part, to provide sufficient time for member states and industry to prepare for the new requirement.
Regulation 18 of MARPOL Annex VI covers both fuel oil availability and quality.
On fuel oil availability, the regulation requires each party to take all reasonable steps to promote the availability of fuel oils which comply with this annex and inform the organization of the availability of compliant fuel oils in its ports and terminals.
Parties are also required to notify IMO when a ship has presented evidence of the non-availability of compliant fuel oil.
Notifications received where there has been evidence of non-availability of compliant fuel oil are available on the IMO Global Integrated Shipping Information System (GISIS) module.